So good morning, everybody. Our topic today is a space to share. And we've been talking this year about building sanctuary, making our presence in our life a safe place for spirit to thrive and create. And last week we talked about inner sanctuary, making our inner life a safe place. And today I want to talk a little bit more about having a safe and sacred space to share with those around us, in particular in relationships and celebration of Valentine's Day this week. How many of you have a Valentine here to celebrate this week? Yes, well, choose one. It doesn't always have to be a romantic or kind of love. You can pick someone in your family or someone you care about, or perhaps even your minister. Who knows? I do have a simple, but I think kind of profound question I want to invite you to ask yourselves this morning, and it is, how much space do I make for love? How much space in your life do you make for love? For intimacy? For vulnerability? For building trust? You know, because a lot of us, we might be married, but we don't make much time for the marriage. Or you might be in a partnership and not make much time for connecting. And it can get challenging when our lives and ourselves are so filled up that we don't even have that little bit of space to build that trust that Harold was singing about, to have an experience of spirit in our lives. Obviously, I think we know in order to experience sanctuary with someone else, we have to have it within ourselves first, right? And it's hard to do, to have that sense of making a space within ourselves to feel and experience a greater love. Even coming into this positive philosophy as a teenager and being a minister for 10 years, sometimes the conditions inside aren't all that pretty. You know, you remember that show Hoarders, where you walk in and everybody's got stuff up to the walls? You know, I'm like that, but on the inside. I'm an inner hoarder. And stacked up in the corner is every bad thing anyone ever said about me, every critical thought I ever had about myself, every bad experience I ever had. I have this great ability to always remember. Even though it's a big mess in there, I know right where to find it and share. And it's not okay to do that to ourselves. What I have learned enough through a spiritual practice is that when my inner house is clear and pristine, that what is there is something valuable, is someone beautiful, is someone who is loving and caring and wants to have a deeper experience of life. But I got to tell you, there have been times where I've invited people into my sacred space when it's been full of the junk. You ever invite someone in and before you know it, your self-criticism's falling all over them and your bad experiences and your projection? You know, we have to be careful, and I don't feel too bad about it because I've been in some messy houses myself with some other people from time to time. But, you know, it's important when we're wanting to share a space of love with someone else that we do our best to make sure that we are ready to share in that space. You know, that's why for me our affirmation this month comes in so handy. I am a safe place. I am sacred space. I am a safe place. I am sacred space. And for me it's kind of like a broom. It helps clean my insides out a little bit, so that I can be present to share in sacred space with someone else. And, you know, all this year we've been talking about being a sanctuary in our own presence, in our own way in our lives. And I want to expand the question a little bit today by saying, you know, is your marriage a sanctuary? Is your partnership a sanctuary? Is your family a sanctuary? Are your friendships sanctuaries? And I know it's tricky because these things take two, and sometimes people aren't contributing in a way, but are we doing the best that we can to contribute to all of our relationships being a space for the divine to thrive and for the sacred to connect with itself through one another? And I don't know about you, but there's, to me, no greater sacrament than that of love and connection with someone that I care about, romantic or in that sense of agape, of sharing the divine's love and the divine's truth. As most of you know, I've been married about 10 minutes. No, it's about 10 weeks, and so far so good. We're doing good. We're ready to write our book on relationships. We'll have it out really soon. I'm kidding. Anybody here married on Valentine's Day? Anybody? Tom and Lindy, all right. So, but I know we have folks married. How many folks married for over 10 years in here? Over 20? Over 30? Over 40? Over 50? Still going. And it's important to recognize that even though you're divorced, you're still on your own path of love, and that's just fine too. So if you've even had that honorable title of husband or wife, I can congratulate you too. But what I know is my marriage so far is wonderful and awesome and exciting, and it really does feel different, even though we were together for a long time. But what I also know is that it's hard work. And there are times where I still get scared, or where I'm in a place of not always trusting, or where the inner hoarder in me is really out, and my wife might get a little scared of that too. And what I know is a big shift in me over the last decade. It would have used to have been that I would be ashamed or embarrassed to share with you that my relationship is hard work. Now today it's something I'm really proud of. I'm proud that it's hard work, because that's what we're trying to do in a sense, is build a sanctuary. And it takes a lot of hard work to have your relationship be a sanctuary, a safe place where both people can thrive and be their best selves and call each other on their crap and hold each other to a higher vision of who they can be. It's not always easy. It used to be, for me, that if my relationship was hard work, I took it as a sign that it wasn't the right relationship for me. So if a relationship got to be hard, it was my signal to start building that exit strategy and get out of there as soon as possible. And I was very naive. I would pray to God, God, give me the perfect relationship. Bring me the perfect person who unconditionally loves me, who is always thinking about me, is present all the time, just the perfect partner, always loving, always right there. And what I've learned is that God will actually bring you a great person, but that God can give you a lot of things, but what God can never really give you is a relationship. God cannot give you a relationship because only you can give yourself that. God will give you every opportunity, every miraculous person that's out there, but until you are choosing to make that investment to be and become that same thing you are asking someone else for, not even God can give you that. And I had to learn that in my life, that I just wanted a perfect relationship to appear, not thinking that I might have to invest in it. I might have to work hard. I might have to sacrifice. I might have to learn. I might have to open my heart and invest those same things in a powerful way. So, I've gotten to learn that lesson, unfortunately, through some hard knocks sometimes along the way, but ultimately in a way that's produced an awesome and wonderful marriage for me. There's an old story. It's over 500 years old. It's a spiritual story about a man who's fallen in love with a woman, and he's trying to get her to marry him. And one day, he confronts her in a marketplace, and he throws all these love letters at her feet. And he starts, telling her beautiful things about herself. Please, please marry me. And the woman, she kind of gets that this guy really isn't in love with her. He's just one of those types that's in love with being in love. He's just very fanciful. So she decides what she's going to say is, yes, okay, I will marry you, but on one condition. You see, right behind you right now, my sister's coming up that hill, and she's more pretty than I am. So before you choose to marry me, why don't you go ahead and take a look at her first? And the man gets big googly eyes, and he turns around, and he doesn't see anything, but he feels the whack of the woman upside the back of his head. And what's the moral of our story? A man is only as loyal as his options. No, that's not. That's true on some degrees of living. No. For me, the deeper spiritual meaning of that story is that when you're in sacred space, when you're really honoring the sacred in love, there can be no other. There can be nothing else. If the divine doesn't demand and draw your attention in that moment, you're not fully present to it. you're in that place of wanting to exit. You're in that place of wanting to escape. And that's what a sacred space demands, are being fully present, fully ready to share in that sacred space. I've always been touched when rereading a famous letter that Ronald Reagan wrote to his son Michael on the occasion of his wedding day. And as many of you know, before he was married to Nancy, Ronald Reagan was married to someone else, and they had 3 kids together, and the marriage didn't end well, and Ronald Reagan was known to be quite the ladies' man behind the scenes. And upon Michael's marriage, he wrote them this letter. He said, "Some men feel their masculinity can only be proven if they play out in their own life all the locker room stories, smugly confident that what a wife doesn't know won't hurt her. The truth is, somehow, way down inside, without her ever finding lipstick on the collar or catching a man in the flimsy excuse of where he was till 3 a.m., a wife does know, and with that knowing, some of the magic of this relationship disappears. There is an old law of physics that you can only get out of a thing as much as you put in it. The man who puts into the marriage only half of what he owns will get that out." And Reagan goes on, "Mike, you know better than many what an unhappy home is and what it can do to others. Now you have a chance to make it come out the way it should. There is no greater happiness for a man than approaching a door at the end of a day, knowing someone on the other side of that door is waiting for the sound of his footsteps." You know, it's a reminder that, that true love isn't a relationship. True love isn't a marriage. True love isn't even a connection. It's a space that we share. It's a space that we share in any given moment. We are open to having a greater experience of the divine through and as and with another human being. And I bet you Michael took that advice, and I bet you he made a bunch of mistakes. And any of us, I'm sure we make a lot of mistakes. But to me, it's all about getting back to that space. Can I get back to that space that we can share where it can be safe for love to thrive, safe for love to grow, safe for love to cry, safe for love to become that much more embodied as who we are because we are with one another. So it took me in my own life a long time to realize that it's a good thing when your relationship is hard work, when you're building that sanctuary. I've had the honor of being the minister here, but the real truth is all of you have ministered to me just as much, if not more so. And I remember, 5 years ago, I'm just going to call her out, Yvonne Wood, she's right over there, and we were talking. She says, "How's your relationship going?" And I say, "Well, it's going pretty good, but it's hard work sometimes," and she could probably see the worry on my brow. And she looked at me and she said, "Josh, I've been married over 50 years, and it's still hard work sometimes." And it was a powerful click moment in that realized, you know what, maybe I'm not on the wrong track in my relationship. Maybe I'm on the right one. One special day, and I never know why she did it, but one of our great practitioners, Frida Wright, she handed me a crumpled up piece of paper with the following quote from Thomas Merton, the Catholic sage, on it. It said, "The beginning of love is the will to let those who we love be perfectly themselves." One more time. "The beginning of love is the will to let those we love be perfectly themselves. The resolution not to twist them to fit our own image." A couple of weeks ago, I shared with you that sometimes when we're giving other people advice, we're really giving it to ourselves, right? And one of the coolest parts about being married for me is I get to go over the wedding ceremony that I do for folks, and it's always unique, but there's always some same things that I put in there, and I've gotten to be a part of many wonderful folks here's wedding ceremonies. But it's kind of cool to go back and read that advice, that stuff that you think you know that you're telling them, and realize that it's really good advice for you. And I've realized that, and I also think they're great rules for sharing sacred space and sacred love with other folks. So I'm going to share those with you today. And the first thing that I often like to do in a wedding is I like to share a quote from Rainer Marie Rilke, who said, "For one human being to love another, that is perhaps the most difficult of all our tasks. the ultimate, the last test and proof, the work for which all other work is but preparation. That's such important words for me because it's a reminder to me, not just in my marriage, but in all the relationships in my life and all that I do in my life, love should always come first. Should always come first and always come last. And when it's not, I'm forgetting something. When I think it's about getting that to-do list done or solving this big problem that's out there or getting this big vision realized and forget that the most important thing in my life is that person in front of me, to love and support them. When I've forgotten that, I've lost that space we share that helps feed us and enlighten us and inspire us. Second thing that I took second note of in ceremonies that I get to write is somewhere I always go off on a spiel about how marriage is miraculous and challenging, like I know. I get to be learning now, but somewhere in there is something quite profound there, and it says that to be married, you have to both be your best self and selfless. You have to be your best self and selfless at the same time. It sounds almost impossible, right? But isn't that what any sacred relationship demands? It demands that we are humble, that we're willing to listen, that we're willing to see someone else's point of view, and at the same time, we have to never weaken ourselves. We have to always stand in our power. We always have to be fully who we are, knowing who we are and what we want, because if we're sacrificing that, we're no longer fully participating in the relationship. So we have to learn to find that balance between being our best self and selfless, becoming our best self because we've made a cause or someone we found to be greater than just our small self, that we want to be a part of a greater love, have a greater space to share. A final thing that I find profound in my weddings is when I first sat down to write one, I had struggled with those traditional vows, where it says, Mary, do you take Henry to be your husband, to have and to hold, to love and to cherish, for better or for worse, till death do you part. And I always really struggled with that one because I remember, I don't know what it is now, but I remember looking at the time, and that divorce rate's over 50%, right? So I figure even if I'm really good and magical at the wedding ceremonies that I produce, maybe 80% of them will carry through, right? And so I didn't want to make people make a promise that they weren't going to be able to keep, because sometimes love leads us into a relationship, but sometimes love has to lead us out of it too, so that we can find our greater self. So I just wondered, what was the best thing to do? And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if one day people were married for a certain amount of time and then renewed? So do you take Harry to be your husband, to have and to hold, to love and to cherish, for better or for worse, until 2022, when we will renew this agreement with one another? I even thought, wouldn't it be kind of cool? It would be just kind of cool if someone said, let's just get married for 10 years and just call it at that. Have a good time, do the best we can, and just that's there. I didn't propose either of these ideas to April, but when I did share them as ideas for anybody, I can still feel the bruise on my arm from those coming up. So it took me a long time. I struggled with it, but this was finally what I came up with. Do you take this person to have and to hold, to love and to cherish, for better or for worse, from this day forward and every day again anew? And every day again anew. The idea for that worked for me is because it's a reminder that a marriage isn't a one-time choice, right? It's a daily choice. And in the same way, love isn't a one-time decision, it's a daily decision. Love is not a one-time choice, it's a daily choice. It's sometimes a moment-by-moment choice. And that's the same thing with that space for love in our lives. We can't just have it there theoretically or there by title. It is our responsibility, if we want to live a spiritual life, to be willing to create that space with those whom we love and cherish most around us. Not just in a promise, but in a practice, in a practice, because that's what love is. It's that practice of being the truth of who we are with someone else. And when we bring those two things together, the sacred can be created within ourselves, with each other, hopefully inspiring those we love, and creating a true sanctuary to those deepest and most profound truths that we know within. So just closing with a prayerful moment, I invite you to join me, if you so choose, in visualizing those spaces for love, first within ourselves, and then with those we love around us. Are we strong enough to be present? Are we willing to cultivate newfound trust? Are we open not just to giving a greater love, but to receiving a deeper love? Perhaps one that we have been denying in our lives because of a grudge or a hurt or a judgment or just a fear. May we open up to experiencing love in a more profound way than it has ever been experienced in our lives before, through that creative sacrament, again, of divine relationship, both with romantic partners, family, friends, loved ones. Let us know that love, that fabric which holds all of us together at that spiritual truth, when we continue to build from it, grows and creates beautiful tapestry in our lives. I'm so thankful to know this truth, and let it be and become. And so it is. So thanks for your time, everybody. Thanks for being here. Have a great Valentine's week.